Captain Zektar adjusted his environmental suit as he stepped onto the bridge of the galactic survey vessel, Harmonious Dawn. The ship's bioluminescent panels cast a soft blue glow across the smooth, curved surfaces that defined Velthari architecture. His 4 arms moved gracefully as he activated the holographic display, revealing the spiral galaxy's outer rim where their latest discovery waited. "Status report, Navigator Quindal," Zektar commanded, his voice carrying the musical tones typical of his species. The navigator's tentacles danced across the control interface. "We're approaching the 3rd planet of the system designated 47B. Preliminary scans confirm it harbors intelligent life, Captain. However, the readings are unusual." Zektar's gill slits fluttered with interest. The Galactic Confederation had been expanding peacefully for over 3 millennia, incorporating hundreds of civilizations into their enlightened society. Each new species brought unique perspectives on art, philosophy, and peaceful coexistence. This would be another routine first contact. "Define unusual, Navigator." The planet's surface temperature varies wildly between regions. Some areas reach temperatures that would kill most known species, while others are frozen solid. The atmospheric composition contains significant levels of dihydrogen monoxide in gaseous form, and the gravity reads at 9.8 standard units. Science Officer Melthara, a crystalline being whose body chimed softly as she moved, approached the captain. "Sir, those readings must be incorrect. No intelligent life could evolve on such a hostile world. The gravity alone would crush most species, and that much water vapor would create constant storms." Zektar nodded thoughtfully. The Confederation's homeworlds were carefully managed paradise planets with stable climates, gentle gravity, and purified atmospheres. Even the most challenging member worlds rarely exceeded 0.7 standard gravity units or temperature variations of more than 10 degrees. Perhaps their technology allows them to live in orbital habitats or underground cities, suggested Communications Officer Yilreth, her insectoid features clicking with curiosity. Many primitive species require such accommodations before they develop proper environmental controls. The main view screen shimmered to life, revealing a blue and brown marble swirled with white clouds. The planet rotated slowly, showing vast oceans that dominated its surface. As they watched, lightning flickered across massive storm systems that dwarfed entire continents. "By the eternal light," whispered Melthara. "They actually live on the surface. I'm detecting billions of life signs distributed across all the continents. How is that possible?" Zektar felt a rare moment of uncertainty. In 3 centuries of service, he had never encountered anything quite like this. "Begin standard first contact protocols. Monitor their communications networks and prepare a universal translator matrix. We'll observe for 1 full planetary rotation before making contact." The crew worked efficiently, their various appendages interfacing with biomechanical systems that had been refined over millennia of peaceful exploration. Within hours, they had decoded the primary communication frequencies and identified several major languages. "Captain," Yilreth reported, her voice carrying notes of confusion, "their entertainment broadcasts are disturbing. I'm seeing repeated scenarios of organized violence, conflict between groups of their own species, and something they call extreme sports that appears to involve deliberately risking death for recreational purposes. Perhaps these are historical documentaries about their primitive past," Zektar suggested hopefully. "Most species go through aggressive phases before achieving enlightenment." Melthara's crystalline form dimmed slightly. "Sir, I'm afraid not. These broadcasts are current. Furthermore, I've analyzed their news transmissions. They report on something called wars happening simultaneously in multiple locations. Their own species is fighting itself while dealing with natural disasters that would evacuate entire sectors in Confederation space." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's organic systems. Zektar processed this information slowly. Violence between members of the same species was nearly unheard of in civilized space. The last recorded incident had occurred over 800 years ago on a pre-contact world, and even then, it had been resolved within days once proper meditation techniques were introduced. "Show me their physical specifications," Zektar ordered. A holographic humanoid figure appeared above the main console. The creature stood upright on two legs, with two arms and a head containing forward-facing eyes. Its skin appeared to be covered in a thin layer of some flexible material rather than proper protective plates or environmental suits. "These readings can't be accurate," Melthera chimed in distress. "According to the scans, they have no natural armor, no environmental protection, and their bodies are mostly composed of water. Yet somehow they survive in temperatures ranging from below freezing to above the boiling point of many compounds. They appear to actually drink dihydrogen monoxide." Yilreth's compound eyes focused on the data stream. "Their muscular density is extraordinary. These beings could potentially move objects weighing several times their own body mass. In standard gravity, they would be capable of significant physical force." "Surely an error in our sensors," Zektar murmured, though doubt crept into his voice. "Continue monitoring. Focus on their leadership structures and diplomatic protocols. We need to understand their social organization before making contact." Over the following hours, the picture became increasingly puzzling. The inhabitants of the planet, who called themselves humans, and their world, Earth, lived in vast cities that would collapse under their own weight on any civilized world. Their architecture reached impossible heights without proper anti-gravity supports. Their transportation systems moved at speeds that would liquefy most beings, and their industrial activities released toxic chemicals that they somehow tolerated. "Captain," Communications Officer Yilreth announced with barely contained alarm, "I've decoded one of their historical databases. Sir, these creatures have survived multiple extinction-level events. Ice ages that covered their continents for millennia, volcanic eruptions that blocked out their star for years, asteroid impacts that would sterilize most worlds. Impossible. No species could adapt to such catastrophic changes." "That's not the most concerning part, sir. According to their records, they didn't just survive these events, they thrived during them. Each catastrophe seems to have made them stronger, more resourceful. They call it adaptation and speak of it as if it's perfectly normal." Science Officer Melthara approached the captain, her crystalline form vibrating with worry. "Sir, I've analyzed their biological scans more thoroughly. These humans don't just tolerate their harsh environment, they require it. Their bodies actually break down without constant physical stress. They deliberately engage in activities that cause controlled damage to their muscular and skeletal systems because it makes them stronger." Zektar felt his gill slits close in disbelief. "You're suggesting they intentionally harm themselves?" "It appears to be necessary for their continued health, sir. Furthermore, their immune systems are incredibly aggressive. They harbor billions of microorganisms within their bodies, maintaining a constant biological warfare that would kill most species outright. Yet somehow, they've achieved symbiosis with these organisms." The captain moved to his command chair, his four arms gripping the armrests as he contemplated this information. Everything about these humans contradicted the natural order of civilized development. Peaceful species evolved on gentle worlds with stable environments. They developed technology to overcome challenges, not biology to endure them. "Sir," Navigator Quindal called out, "we're receiving what appears to be a transmission directed at our ship." "That's impossible. We're using full stealth protocols. Our presence should be undetectable." "Nevertheless, sir, there's a narrow beam communication being directed precisely at our location. The message is brief and in their dominant language. Translation reads, 'Welcome to Earth. We know you're there. Please respond when you're ready to talk." The bridge fell into stunned silence. No pre-contact species had ever detected a Confederation survey vessel. Their stealth technology was thousands of years ahead of anything a single-planet civilization should possess. "How?" Zektar whispered. Melthera's analysis chimed softly. "Sir, reviewing their technology base, they've developed detection methods based on gravitational distortion rather than electromagnetic signatures. They're looking for things that shouldn't exist in their space, not trying to see what's hidden. It's an entirely different approach to sensor technology." Yilreth's antenna twitched nervously. "Captain, there's more. I'm detecting massive structures throughout their solar system, not just on their home world, but on their moon, the neighboring planets, and in orbit around their star. They've spread throughout their entire system in just a few centuries since developing spaceflight." "Show me," Zektar commanded. The view screen shifted to display the solar system. Red markers appeared throughout the display. Stations, mining operations, research facilities, and massive construction projects that dwarfed anything in Confederation space. The humans had turned their entire star system into a resource extraction and manufacturing center. "By the eternal light," breathed Navigator Quindal. "They've industrialized their entire system, and sir, some of these installations are armed." "Armed? With what?" "Kinetic bombardment systems capable of planetary sterilization, energy projection systems that could crack moons. And sir, they've built them to fire in any direction, including toward their own homeworld. They're prepared to fight anybody, including themselves." Zektar rose from his command chair, his forearms trembling slightly. 3 millennia of peaceful expansion had not prepared the Confederation for anything like this. These humans had evolved not in paradise, but in hell. They had been forged by catastrophe, shaped by violence, and tempered by struggle. They were everything the enlightened galaxy was not. "Sir," Communications Officer Yilreth announced quietly, "the transmission is repeating. But there's an addendum. It says, 'We're peaceful, we want to talk, but we're ready if you're not.'" The captain stared at the blue marble on the screen, watching the lightning storms dance across its surface. For the first time in his career, Zektar wondered if the Confederation had made a terrible mistake. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Melthera. Zektar closed his gill slits and made the decision that would change everything. "Open a channel. Let's see what these Deathworlders have to say." The communication array hummed to life. "Preparing to make first contact with a species that thrived where angels feared to tread. In the depths of space, 2 vastly different civilizations prepared to meet, neither truly understanding what they were about to encounter. Admiral Kethmoran's flagship, the Eternal Serenity, dropped out of hyperspace with the grace typical of Confederation vessels. The massive bioship's living hull pulsed gently as it oriented toward the blue planet that had caused such unprecedented concern among the High Council. Surrounding him, a fleet of 200 vessels represented the largest peaceful contact mission in Confederation history. "Admiral," reported his aide, Sub-Commander Velith, "Captain Zektar's vessel has been in communication with the surface dwellers for 3 standard cycles. His reports grow more unusual with each transmission." Kethmoran, a towering figure even among his species with 6 elegantly jointed arms and skin that shifted color with his emotions, currently displayed deep purple hues of concern. Summarize the situation. "The humans, that's what they call themselves, have been remarkably cooperative. They've shared scientific data, cultural exchanges, and even invited Captain Zektar to visit their homeworld. However, sir, the more we learn about them, the more unsettling they become." The Admiral gestured for details with 3 of his arms, while the others interfaced with the ship's command systems. "Sir, they've casually mentioned surviving plagues that killed billions of their own species. They speak of world wars involving hundreds of nations as historical footnotes. Their children play games that simulate combat scenarios. They voluntarily inject weakened diseases into their bodies to make themselves stronger. Kethmoran's skin shifted to a worried orange. And Captain Zektar's assessment? He believes they're genuinely peaceful in intent, sir. But he's concerned about what their definition of peaceful might mean. When asked about their defense capabilities, they laughed and said they didn't have any worth mentioning because they'd built everything assuming they'd only fight other humans. The flagship's bioluminescent panels pulsed as incoming data streams updated their understanding of human civilization. Kethmoran reviewed the files with growing unease. These humans had developed technologies that the Confederation considered impossible, not because the physics was wrong, but because no civilized species would ever build such things. "Admiral," interrupted Navigator Prime Gistel, "we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld. It's unconventional." "Show me." The main screen activated, revealing a human female sitting in what appeared to be a government building. She had short gray hair and wore simple clothing, yet carried herself with an authority that reminded Kethmoran of sector governors. "Greetings, Admiral Kethmoran. I'm President Chen of the United Earth Federation. Captain Zektar has told us about your peaceful confederation, and we're honored to meet you. We've prepared a formal reception if you'd like to visit Earth." The transmission quality was perfect, the translation flawless, and the tone respectfully diplomatic. Yet something about the human's expression suggested depths that made Kethmoran's skin flicker uncertain colors. "She knows my name and rank," he noted quietly to his staff. "How?" Science Coordinator Melthara, who had transferred from the survey vessel, chimed her response. "Sir, they've analyzed our ship's configuration, compared it to standard Confederation hierarchy protocols in the databases Captain Zektar shared, and deduced the command structure. They did it in less than 6 hours. That's efficient. Sir, that's not the concerning part. They've also calculated our fleet's combat capabilities, identified our probable supply lines, and mapped our communication frequencies. When I asked why, President Chen said it was standard diplomatic preparation to understand who they were talking to." Kethmoran felt a chill that had nothing to do with ship's temperature controls. "They treat intelligence gathering as normal diplomatic protocol?" "Admiral," Communications Specialist Yilreth added, "there's more. They've offered to share their defensive specifications as a gesture of goodwill. I've reviewed the data, and, sir, they don't have defenses. They have weapons. Specifically, weapons designed to fight opponents exactly like us." The Admiral's 6 arms moved in patterns of deep thought. "Explain." "Their entire military doctrine is built around fighting technologically superior opponents, sir. They assume any enemy will be faster, stronger, and better equipped, so they've developed strategies based on endurance, adaptability, and what they call asymmetric warfare." Subcommander Velith approached with additional reports. "Sir, I've analyzed their historical military conflicts. These humans have never fought a war where both sides were equally matched. They either completely outclassed their opponents or were completely outclassed themselves. And, sir, they won most of the time when they were outmatched." "How is that possible?" "They don't surrender, sir. Ever. I found records of human military units continuing to fight when outnumbered 1,000 to 1, with no supplies, no hope of reinforcement, and no possibility of victory. They kept fighting until they found a way to win or until every last one of them was dead." Kethmoran's skin had shifted to a pale yellow of fear. No civilized species behaved that way. Warfare in the galaxy was a refined affair. Formal challenges, limited objectives, negotiated settlements. The idea of fighting to literal extinction was barbaric. "Admiral," Navigator Gistel announced, "we're receiving another transmission. This one is marked as urgent." President Chen appeared again, but her expression had changed. The diplomatic pleasantness remained, but something harder lurked beneath it. "Admiral, I need to inform you that we've detected several other ships entering our system. Our deep space monitors show what appear to be Confederation vessels, but they're not responding to our hails and they're not following standard diplomatic approach vectors. Are these yours?" Keth Moran felt confusion ripple through his command staff. "What other ships?" "We're the only fleet in this system." Science Coordinator Melthara's crystalline form darkened. "Admiral, I'm detecting ships on the edge of the system. Configuration unknown. They're using stealth technology, but the humans are right. They're not following diplomatic protocols." "Impossible. No one else should know about this first contact." The transmission continued. President Chen's voice had taken on a different quality, still polite, but with an underlying tension that made Keth Moran's evolutionary instincts scream warnings. "Admiral, our protocols require us to consider unannounced armed vessels in our space as potentially hostile. We're prepared to defend ourselves if necessary." "She's giving us a warning," Sub-Commander Velith realized. "The humans think we're part of some kind of coordinated attack." Before Keth Moran could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. The bioluminescent panels shifted to warning colors as emergency protocols activated. "Admiral," navigation called out, "the unknown vessels are moving toward the planet. They're accelerating beyond safe speeds and, sir, they're charging weapons." The main screen split, showing both President Chen's transmission and a tactical display of the solar system. Red contacts were moving inward from the outer planets, their approach vectors clearly hostile. "Those aren't Confederation ships," Keth Moran realized with horror. "The Devourers found us." The Devourers were an ancient enemy that the Confederation had fought for millennia, a machine intelligence that consumed organic life wherever they found it. They had been dormant for centuries, but somehow they had tracked the first contact mission to Earth. President Chen's image flickered as human communication systems adapted to the changing situation. "Admiral, we're reading massive energy buildups from those ships. Our deep space stations are reporting that they've been scanned by some kind of invasive probe technology. We need to know right now. Are you with them or against them?" Keth Moran's training took over. "Against them? Absolutely. President Chen, those are hostile forces intent on destroying all organic life in this system. We need to coordinate our defenses immediately." The human leader's expression didn't change, but somehow she seemed to grow more dangerous. "Understood, Admiral. We're implementing Defense Protocol 7. I need to ask, do you have combat experience against these Devourers?" "Extensive experience. We've fought them for thousands of years." "Good. We'll follow your lead on enemy capabilities and tactics. However, Admiral, I need you to understand something about humans before we begin fighting together." "What is that?" President Chen leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, Keth Moran saw what lay beneath the diplomatic facade. It wasn't cruelty or anger. It was something far more unsettling. It was the calm competence of a predator that had never known fear. "Admiral, when we fight to win. Not to achieve objectives, not to gain territory, not to force negotiations. We fight until our enemies no longer exist. If you're not prepared for that level of commitment, you need to tell me now." Before Keth Moran could respond, the sensor arrays erupted with new contacts. The human defenses were coming online, and the readings were beyond anything in Confederation experience. "Admiral," Science Coordinator Melthara chimed in panic, "the humans are activating weapon systems throughout their solar system. Sir, the energy readings are off our scales. Some of these installations are more powerful than our entire fleet combined." President Chen continued, her voice perfectly calm. "We've been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars, Admiral. We've always known that something out there might want to hurt us. And we've built everything we have with one question in mind. How do we kill it?" The tactical display showed Devourer ships advancing on Earth, their dark forms bristling with weapons that could crack planets. But it also showed something that made Kethmoran's blood run cold. Every asteroid in the system had begun moving. Every orbital platform was rotating to bring weapons to bear, and from Earth itself, launch signatures were appearing by the thousands. "What are those?" he whispered. "Those are our children, Admiral," President Chen replied, somehow having heard his question. "Every human with a ship, a suit, or a weapon who can reach space. They're going to defend their home." The space around Earth filled with human craft. Military vessels, civilian ships hastily armed, individual fighters in powered armor, and vehicles that defied classification. They moved with a coordination that spoke of lifelong preparation and a unity of purpose that no Confederation species had ever achieved. "By the eternal light," Sub-Commander Velith breathed. "They're not just defending their planet. They're treating this entire system as their territory." President Chen's image smiled for the first time, and it was the most terrifying thing Kethmoran had ever seen. It wasn't cruel or savage. It was the expression of someone who had found exactly the fight they had been hoping for their entire lives. "Admiral, welcome to Earth. Now let's show these machines what happens when they threaten a death world." The battle was about to begin, and for the first time in his long career, Admiral Kethmoran wondered if the Confederation had allied with something more dangerous than the enemy they faced. The silence in the aftermath was more terrifying than the battle itself. Admiral Kethmoran stood on the bridge of the Eternal Serenity, watching the tactical display with all 6 of his arms trembling. Where moments before there had been a Devourer fleet of 47 warships, there was now only expanding clouds of metallic debris catching the light of Earth's sun. The human fleet hung motionless in space around them, their weapons still powered but no longer firing. The battle had lasted exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds. The Devourers, machines that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, had been systematically dismantled with surgical precision. "Admiral," Science Coordinator Melthera whispered, her crystalline form dim with shock. "The humans didn't just defeat them. They took them apart piece by piece. I've never seen anything like it." Kethmoran's skin cycled through colors of confusion and fear. "Report. Sir, the humans targeted every Devourer ship simultaneously. They used weapons we didn't even know they had. Gravity manipulators that crushed ships from the inside out. Energy beams that somehow turned the Devourer's own armor against them, and projectiles that moved faster than our sensors could track." Sub-Commander Velith approached with additional data, his usual composure completely shattered. "Admiral, it's worse than that. They weren't just fighting the Devourers in space. While we were watching the ship-to-ship combat, they were infiltrating the Devourer command network. Sir, they turned 12 of the enemy ships against their own fleet." "That's impossible. Devourer technology is quantum encrypted. No organic species has ever managed to hack their systems." "The humans didn't hack them, sir. They talked to them." Kethmoran felt his gill slits close in disbelief. "Explain." Communications specialist Yilreth stepped forward, her compound eyes reflecting the bridge's emergency lighting. "Sir, humans have been creating artificial intelligences for centuries. When they encountered the Devourer machine minds, they didn't see them as incomprehensible alien technology. They saw them as computers, and humans have been making computers do what they want since before they left their homeworld." The Admiral moved to his command chair, his legs suddenly unsteady. "You're telling me they convinced machine intelligences to commit suicide?" "Not convinced, sir. Reprogrammed. The humans isolated individual Devourer ships, overwhelmed their communication arrays with targeted data streams, and simply rewrote their core directives. It took them less than 4 minutes per ship." A new transmission came through from Earth. President Chen appeared on screen, but she was no longer in her government office. She stood in what appeared to be a military command center, with holographic displays showing every corner of the solar system. Her diplomatic facade had been completely stripped away, revealing something that made Kethmaran's evolutionary instincts scream. Admiral, the immediate threat has been neutralized. However, we need to discuss the larger situation. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected more Devourer fleets moving in this direction. It appears they've been tracking your Confederation ships for some time. Kethmaran found his voice with difficulty. President Chen, your military capabilities are beyond our projections. The human leader smiled, but it contained no warmth. Admiral, what you just witnessed wasn't our military. That was our planetary defense force. Civilians, mostly. Our actual military is currently deploying to the outer system to establish a perimeter. Civilians? Sub-Commander Veleth whispered in horror. Those were civilian forces? Every human learns basic combat skills as children, President Chen explained matter-of-factly. We consider it part of our education, like mathematics or literature. What you saw was ordinary citizens defending their home. Our professional soldiers are somewhat more capable. The tactical display updated with new contacts launching from Earth and its orbital installations. The numbers were staggering. Thousands of ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the defense fleet that had just annihilated the Devourers. Admiral, President Chen continued, her voice taking on a tone that made Kethmaran's skin flush pale with terror. I need to ask you something. When your people first contacted us, were you planning to invade? Absolutely not. The Confederation is committed to peaceful expansion. We've never conquered a single world by force. I believe you, but I need to know if that's because you're genuinely peaceful, or because you've never encountered serious resistance. The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Kethmaran realized with growing horror that he didn't know the answer. For 3 millennia, the Confederation had expanded unopposed. Every species they encountered had been delighted to join their peaceful civilization. No one had ever said no. President Chen, he began carefully, what happens if we had said no? The human leader's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in Kethmaran's bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Admiral, let me show you something. The transmission shifted to display a star map of the local sector. Red markers appeared throughout the display, hundreds of them, scattered across dozens of star systems. These are human colonies, Admiral. We've been expanding for the past 2 centuries. When we encounter other species, we ask permission to settle nearby systems. If they say no, we respect that decision and move on. But Admiral, no one has ever said no twice. What does that mean? It means that when someone tries to attack human civilians, we don't just defend ourselves. We solve the problem permanently. There are 17 species in this sector that used to be hostile to human expansion. They're all extinct now. Science Coordinator Melthara's crystalline form went completely dark. You committed genocide? President Chen's eyes turned cold. No, Coordinator. We committed extermination. Genocide implies we targeted them because of who they were. We killed them because of what they did. When you threaten human civilians, you stop being a political entity and become a pest control problem. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle humming of bioship systems that suddenly sounded like funeral dirges. Admiral, President Chen continued, I want you to understand something about humans. We don't have a concept of proportional response. When attacked, we don't seek to repel invaders or achieve limited military objectives. We seek to ensure that the entity that attacked us ceases to exist in any meaningful form. Navigator Gistel's voice was barely a whisper. But the Confederation has never attacked anyone. No, you haven't, which is why you're still alive. President Chen's words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Admiral, your Confederation encompasses how many star systems? Approximately 12,000 inhabited worlds across 800 systems. And your total military consists of what? A few hundred ships like yours, designed primarily for police actions and ceremonial duties? Keth Moran felt reality shifting around him. Yes, but we've never needed more. Civilized species don't engage in large-scale warfare. Admiral, let me ask you a question. If humanity wanted to conquer the Confederation, how long do you think it would take? The Admiral's training demanded he consider the question tactically, but the answer was so overwhelming that his mind recoiled from it. Earth alone had just demonstrated weapons technology centuries ahead of Confederation standards. Their civilian defense force had destroyed a devourer fleet that would have required the entire Confederation military to defeat. And now they were saying this was merely a tiny fraction of their actual capabilities. You could take the entire Confederation in a matter of months, he admitted, his skin flushing gray with despair. Weeks, actually. But that's not why I'm telling you this, Admiral. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand what your people have stumbled into. You've made first contact with a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history learning to kill things that are bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter than we are. We are very, very good at it. Sub-Commander Velith stepped forward, his voice shaking. President Chen, what do you want from us? The human leader's expression softened slightly, showing glimpses of the diplomat they had first met. The same thing we've always wanted, Commander. Peace, trade, cultural exchange, friendship. But I need your people to understand what you're entering into friendship with. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the transmission expanded to show multiple displays. One showed human ships moving through hyperspace toward distant devourer strongholds. Another displayed massive construction projects throughout human space. A third showed what appeared to be entire star systems being converted into fortress worlds. Admiral, the Devourers have been hunting your people for millennia. They've systematically destroyed every species they've encountered, and they've learned to track Confederation ship signatures across vast distances. Your peaceful expansion has been leaving a trail for them to follow, and they've been gathering forces for a final assault on your core worlds. Keth Moran felt his heart stop beating. You're saying our entire civilization is under threat? Was under threat. The Devourer fleet that tracked you here was their primary strike force. The others moving in this direction are their reserves. Humanity is currently in the process of hunting them down and destroying them completely. Why would you help us? President Chen smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. Because despite what I've just told you about human capabilities, we genuinely are a peaceful species, Admiral. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to explore it, learn from it, and share it with others. The fact that we're extremely good at killing things doesn't mean we enjoy it. Communications specialist Yilreth approached the center of the bridge, her voice filled with awe and terror. You're offering to protect the entire Confederation. We're offering partnership, Specialist. Your people have achieved something remarkable. 12,000 worlds living in peace and harmony. That's beautiful. But it's also fragile. And there are things in this galaxy that would destroy it simply because they can. The transmission shifted again, showing human fleets moving toward the outer galaxy. Each fleet was larger than the entire Confederation military. Humans have been alone in space for centuries, Admiral. We've been building our defenses against threats we imagined might exist. Now we've found people worth protecting, and enemies worth fighting. This is what humans are for. Admiral Keth Moran stared at the display, watching human ships disappear into hyperspace to hunt down an enemy that had terrorized his people for millennia. He thought of the 12,000 peaceful worlds of the Confederation, populated by beings who had never known true warfare, who had built their entire civilization on the assumption that the universe was fundamentally safe. "President Chen," he said quietly, "what do we tell our people?" The human leader considered the question carefully. "Tell them the truth, Admiral. Tell them that they've been living next to predators without knowing it. Tell them that they're safe now, but only because they've made friends with an even bigger predator." She paused, looking directly at him through the transmission. "And Admiral? Tell them that humanity considers the Confederation to be under our protection now. Anyone who threatens your people will be dealt with accordingly." As the transmission ended, Keth Moran looked around his bridge at the faces of beings who had just realized their entire understanding of the universe was wrong. They had come to make contact with what they assumed would be another peaceful species ready to join their enlightened civilization. Instead, they had awakened something that made their nightmares look like children's dreams. But that something had chosen to be their friend. "Sir," Sub-Commander Velith asked quietly, "what are your orders?" Keth Moran closed his gill slits and made the decision that would reshape galactic civilization. "Send a message to the High Council. Tell them we've made contact with humanity. Tell them we're allies now, and tell them to prepare a formal treaty of mutual defense." He paused, watching human ships patrol the edges of the system with casual competence that spoke of absolute confidence in their abilities. "And Sub-Commander, tell them to send our best diplomats. We need to make sure these humans never have a reason to reconsider their friendship." In the depths of space, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The age of peaceful expansion was over. The age of protected peace had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient predators were learning that they were no longer the apex of the food chain.